The most significant activity of mind is generation of thoughts, and most significant activity of tongue is generation of words. The activity of one's mind is related to the activity of one's tongue. Thus, the words we speak reflect the kind of thoughts generated in our mind. Therefore, the thoughts that are guided by the knowledge from Gurbani, also called as Sabad, shall certainly have a positive influence on the words we speak. Let's study this fact in the light of Gurbani references. Gur sabdi man rangeya, rasna prem pyar. Gur sabdi man rangeya, that is, when one's mind is imbued with teachings of Gurbani. Rasna prem pyar, that is, the tongue of such person utters words that are full of love. Gur sabdi man rangeya, rasna prem pyar. Thus, according to Gurbani, the thought process of one's mind has an impact on the words uttered by one's tongue. Accordingly, if one's mind is under the influence of Guru's knowledge, the impact would be on the tongue as well. Sabde hi har man vasai, rasna har ras khai. Sabde hi har man vasai. Sabde hi means only under the influence of Guru's knowledge. Har man vasai means godly thoughts influence one's mind. That leads to an impact on tongue wherein rasna har ras khaye, which means that due to essence of mind's influence, the words rendered by the tongue are imbibed in sublime nectar of love. Sabde hi har man vasai, rasna har ras khaye. Therefore, what happens in the thought process due to teachings of Guru is showcased in the words of one's tongue. Gurmati har sada paya, rasna har ras samaye. Gurmati har sada paya means God is always realized in one's mind with Guru's teachings. Rasna har ras samaye, that is, under the influence of this realization, the words rendered by one's tongue bear the essence of sublime nectar. From the messages of Gurbani, we have understood that the thoughts generated in mind have an impact on the words generated by tongue. And from the messages of Gurbani, we have also understood that mind generates thoughts, whereas tongue generates words. As deep one's mind goes to contemplate God, one's tongue shall refer to God more frequently. There is a reference of Gurbani. How vari jio vari amrit bani man vasavanaya. Amrit bani man vasaye, amrit naam tyavanaya. Now this happens at the level of one's mind. Thereby, one's tongue renders discussions about God more frequently. Amrit katha kahe sada din rati avara aakh sunavanaya. Kahe sada din rati aakh sunavanaya. Consequently, this happens at the level of one's tongue. Thus, according to the thoughts getting framed in one's mind, one's tongue speaks God, kahiye, utters God, uchre, elaborates God, pani, and describes God, bakhana. There is a reference of Gurbani. Jeti Prabhu janai rasna tet pani. Prabhu pani by tongue means to elaborate about God by one's tongue. Rasna tet pani. Rasna uchre har sravani sune sodare mitta. Har uchre by tongue means to utter about God by one's tongue. Rasna uchre. Gun anik rasna kya bakhane. Aganat sada akat. Gun bakhane by tongue means to describe about God by one's tongue. Rasna gun bakhane. नाम बिना कैसे सुख लहिए. रसना राम नाम जस कहिए. Jas kahiye by tongue means to speak about God by one's tongue. Rasna jas kahiye. The real activity of tongue, therefore, is to speak, utter, elaborate, and describe. According to Gurbani, the activity of tongue is to speak, kahiye, utter, uchre, elaborate, pani, and describe, bakhana. Thus, japna by tongue also need to be interpreted according to the established activity of tongue. For example, tu hi japna. Rasna japti tu hi. Frequent references about him is tu hi japna by one's tongue. Likewise, ek naam japna. Rasna japiye ek naam. Frequent references about his omnipresence is ek naam japna by one's tongue. Har japna. Rasna japti har neet. Frequent discussion about God is har japna by one's tongue. But we need to confirm whether Gurbani has ever mentioned NaaM Japna by Rasna as NaaM Pana or as NaaM Uchre. Yes, there are references of NaaM Pana or as NaaM Uchre for tongue in Gurbani. The reference of Rasna Naam Pana by tongue in Gurbani. The Gurbani reference is Chet Govind Aradhiye Hove Anand Kana Sant Jana Mil Paiye Rasna Naam Pana. Naam Pana by tongue asserts that Naam Japna by tongue is rather Naam Pana, that is elaboration about the omnipresence of God. Likewise, Naam Uchare by tongue in Gurbani. The reference is Jakao apni kirpa tare sojan rasna naam uchare. Mention of Naam Uchare asserts that Naam Japna by tongue is Naam Uchare, that is describing God. On the other hand, if a tongue has never uttered a word about God, such tongue in fact is useless. Rasna Japena Naam Til Kar Kattiye, which means that if a tongue has never ever elaborated God, it should rather be cut into small pieces. There is another related reference of Gurbani. Jo pe rasna राम ना कहबो, कहबो। उपजत बिनसत रोवत रहबो. With regard to tongue, jape and कहबो in these references in fact mean the same. As there is influence of one's thoughts on one's words, similarly, vice versa is true as well. Which means that there is influence of words spoken frequently on one's thought process as well. Thus, if one's tongue keeps referring to God, this would generate thoughts about God in one's mind. Due to generation of thoughts about God, God stays in one's remembrance always. In other words, God stays in one's Simran. Thus, one can retain God in one's thoughts, that is Simran, through frequent references about God on one's tongue. Aat pahar simraho tis rasna, which means that through continued elaboration of attributes of God, one can retain God in one's thoughts. Aat pahar simraho tis rasna. Thus we can understand from the references of Gurbani that NaaM Japna in mind means to realize God's omnipresence in one's thoughts. And NaaM Japna on tongue means to describe the omnipresence of God in the uttered words. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.